All right, welcome back to the show again, everybody. We're continuing with an amazing night tonight. We've got a guest with us, Mark Stavish, amazing, amazing author. Just reprinted, updated his book that we're going to be talking about. One of the ones we're going to be talking about tonight, "The Path of Freemasonry." He has a site, Institute for Hermetic Studies. This is the it's hermeticinstitute.org. So we're just going to get right into it because we've got a lot to cover. So everybody, Mark Stavish is next.
Welcome to the Three Beards podcast. My name's Craig, along with Austin and Chris.
Passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century.
Let me out.
I'm afraid that is quite
then live to send the innocent to their death? Is this justice and honor in Massachusetts colony?
All right. And Austin's going to be kind of hit or miss on this one. He's got to take care of the family side there. So he's playing Mr. Mom. So at this time, let's bring on Mark Stavish to the show. How are you, sir?
Wonderful. It's great to be here.
Well, great to have you. Yeah, this is one I've been trying to do that because I kind of owed it to Chris. He's had a few things where we've had people that have had the other side of Freemasonry, their other takes on this. And this one, bringing him on, here's somebody who is practicing, he's actually part of the Brotherhood. And so this one, it'd be nice having Chris too, because then you guys can both look at me and just say, no, we can't do that. We can't talk about that one. So because he's tried to get me on to join several times, and I'm like the joke says, I want to know what's in the basement in the old lodges, the temples and stuff. I don't care about the broom closet in the local, the local lodge. I want to know what's the secrets that I go, as much as nice as picnics and potlucks and get-togethers are, that's not where my head would be. So I can't. I keep turning him down.
Well, Masonry is a big tent, and there's that fraternal aspect of it where there's potlucks and fish fries and chicken dinners, and then there's those aspects of it which are more philosophical. Unfortunately, that has taken a back seat to Anglo-Saxon Masonry, probably for the better part of the last 80 or 100 years. But it has always been there and has always been alive. And we have seen a tremendous resurgence in an interest in that in the last 15 years. But, it's been slow. So probably would appear to many people in the craft as really in the last 10 or so with traditional observance Masonry. Where many young men join and they want the traditional Masonic experience. The Dan Brown, he did a great service to Masonry in many ways, and many Grand Lodges dropped the ball on it. They could have taken tremendous advantage of that in 2005 and roughly in that period, but they didn't. It happens, but we can see there are at least good changes happening now.
Yeah, no, that was one of the things I was going to actually ask you is, with pop culture coming out, national, the National Treasure movies, Dan Brown's novels that came out. Was that something that, do you feel like that brought more interest, in like people asking for joining to the Masons, or do you think, like you said, it was kind of both negative and positive, aspect of people trying to get information?
Well, I think it was fundamentally positive. I mean, all publicity is good publicity. And the negative side or the downside would be, again, that many Grand Lodges dropped the ball and many local lodges dropped the ball. They weren't able to deal with this influx of young men asking about Masonic secrets. And we can sit here and talk about the problems of, again, Masonry over the last 30, 40, 50 years, 60 years, or and which had to be, as I said, mostly focusing on fraternity and charity. Masonic charity is incredibly important, and it goes to the tune of over $1 million a day. So it is quite spectacular.
Wow,
but
that is.
And as I've mentioned often, Masonic, the Shriner Hospitals for Children work at no charge. They'll pick you up, drop you off, put you up, take care of the surgery, no charge. And I have to say, the only reason you will get a bill is because they were sued by the insurance companies some years ago, telling them that they were told they have to issue a bill. However, there is no effort made to collect that bill. So Masonry does a considerable amount of good in its communities and in the nation as a whole. But where it has dropped the ball has been on the philosophical side. And my book, The Path of Freemasonry, was an effort when it was initially written, and is now, to attempt to address that in a manner that is both useful to a member of the craft, but also non-Masons, because Masonry is more than just, and I know some will find this terribly offensive, it's more than just Blue Lodge. It really is a way of life. It is a philosophical view. And that philosophical view is for anyone who wants to improve themselves.
But I was mentioning to Craig, I mean, Masonry kind of took a turn when brothers started using the lodge for covers to leave the house. And I mean, I don't know if that happened in your origin or your state where you're from, but I noticed in some states and some lodges, the brother would be out doing different stuff that didn't have to do with Masonry. They'd be like, honey, I got a lodge meeting tonight, or I got this, or I got that, or I got that. And then it just all tied back into women thinking Masonry was like a bad thing. And then the younger generation was like, they kind of shied away from it because the parents are getting younger and the grandparents are getting younger. So Freemasonry is not as much as talked about as it used to be.
Well, I think that there's going to be different experiences in different cultures, because Masonry is very much a representative of its community, because it's made up of the members of its community. And then that works both for good and ill. I think what we saw generally is the boom in the post-war period, where men were coming back from the Second World War and from the Korean conflict, and they wanted to maintain that sense of purpose and brotherhood which they had. And that was coming on the tail end of the golden era of the fraternal societies. They had peaked somewhere around 1920, 1930. And Masonry just was so huge that its peak was probably 1964, 1965 in terms of members. So you had this massive influx of men into the order. However, they didn't necessarily know why they were joining other than fraternity. So we saw a certain diluting of those principles of philosophy, not charity, but philosophy. And it just became an extension. It became kind of that watered down men's club in a way. The beauty of it is the rituals are something that were very difficult to change. I mean, they have been changed for better or worse at times, but the fundamental Blue Lodge rituals, those fundamental rituals you experience in the lodge, are still very strong, and in part upon those who experience them, a experience that cannot be described in words. It can only be had. It's like anything else. To say it's an experience, it means to be had. I mean, you can read about it, but reading it in one of the monitors would not do it justice, because you'd have to do it in your imagination, and you still wouldn't know what's really going on. Which is, just as a side note, when Masonic exposés started being published. And I think some of the earliest ones were in the late 18th century. I'm not certain. I have to check on that. The people who were buying them were fundamentally members of the craft, because learning the rituals by mouth to ear is a terribly laborious process. So they would get these monitors and, of course, mark them up or make notes, because they're forbidden to make notes. But no one said you were forbidden to get someone else's notes and crib them as your own.
You're
and
right.
Of course, later on, different lodges would issue their own ciphers, as they're called, which essentially is a scrambled edition of the ritual. And if you know the ritual, you can make it out. If you don't, it's just word salad to you. And it is, but if you know, you'll be able to figure it out. If you know it, if you've experienced the ritual a few times, you'll know the words. So all of that kind of plays into the mystery of Freemasonry. What is the mystery, and what is the secret? And the secrets have to do with essentially what we call Masonic light, L-I-G-H-T, light, and the revelation of Masonic light. And ultimately, that light is going to be symbolic. And this is where we get into trouble with folks, is people want to know the secret as if it's written down somewhere. And, I give away all the secrets in my book.
Mm-hmm.
It's all there. But if you weren't paying attention when you were initiated, you're not going to notice it. So you could even be, I've had brothers, ask me about stuff in the book. I said, well, it's right there. That was in your degree or close proximity. But others who really appreciate it, they're paying attention, because again, Masonry is a big tent. It involves a great many people and a great many jurisdictions, a great many rights and degrees. And so there's something in it for everyone, which is the beauty of it. But that's also the confusion. So when a young man joins the order now, I really encourage them to stay with it, visit a variety of lodges, get in contact with, know really why they want to join to begin with. Because, Scottish Rite, Southern jurisdiction, Northern jurisdiction have spectacular education programs. Here in Pennsylvania, we have spectacular education programs, and often it's for free. I mean, this is the thing. There's so much that you can get from the craft if you want to. So we say you get out of it really what you put into it.
Essentially, you're absolutely right. People think that, I get the compass and square with the G in the middle of it. The police won't bother me, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
No, it's what you can do for the craft, not what the craft can do for you. When you become a Mason, it's to make a great man better. It's supposed to make a good man better.
Mm-hmm.
That's the faith that we live on, as being walking on that plumb line. So it's like, I notice a lot of people want to get in Freemasonry for the wrong reasons now. And it kind of bothers me when I mean, I could give you the cipher and you couldn't figure it out. I mean, it's people.
Yeah, you want the secrets? Read my book.
Exactly.
Go
exactly. It's just, I'm like,
but
it's like
won't be the same.
It's like the Dan Brown thing. I always tell them, I'm convinced one of these things has that room where you're going to slide the little, the wall sconce, and all of a sudden you're, the wall's going to pull aside, and there is going to be that dusty tome, and that's what I'm after. That's what I want to find.
Maybe
but it doesn't exist.
I know that's come on, give me my dreams.
Maybe you have experienced this, but I've never experienced it. I mean, I've been to other lodges in other states, but for the big lodges, like the Lodge of New York, whatever, let's just say downtown Manhattan, that
Right.
lodge, Craig, it seems to think there's secrets in that lodge and underground stuff. But I don't know. I mean, maybe you can answer this, but I don't know on the level of brotherhood that maybe you may be 32nd. I may be 32nd, but can we get into that lodge with our lights, rights, and benefits? Or are they going to be like, no, you're part of the Pennsylvania Grand Lodge, whatever. No, we don't recognize you, even though you're recognized. FNAM or ANFM,
Right.
even though you're recognized, are you going to be able to get into that multi-million-dollar lodge downtown New York? I can't answer.
I've never had trouble getting into any lodge, and I think it's because it's how you approach it, but also in terms of what you were talking about. People think there's secrets, but a lot of times you look at I think it's the Grand Lodge of Philadelphia. Someone was telling me how, I mean, this is a massive building. You have to understand that it's massive. Okay. And someone was talking to me about a whole section of the library, which they were finally able to get through, in which it had this nice collection of occult material from the early 20th century. Now, this was a lot of standard off-the-shelf stuff, but for someone like myself, even though it's off the shelf, it's just wonderful to see original editions and see who they came from and whose library donated them. And some people might mistake that as, like the secret holdings. Often it just gets stuck in a closet because there's so much stuff. We do have in our temple here semi-secret rooms. We joke about them. We often show them off on tours. That's how secret they are. But, and it's just a beautiful architectural hideaway that is part of the old rituals. They're not used often much anymore. But we take a little pleasure in showing that this is how ingenious these folks were when they designed this structure. And we explain what that part of the ritual is to the candidate of why it's important. But I think this idea, again, that, there's going to be a book of secrets is really difficult and damaging. And not to get too sidetracked here, but it plays into a lot of conspiracy notions. And notice I didn't say theories, but notions.
Yeah.
And because when people have a conspiracy theory, as we call it, or notion, it's because they have a perception or a understanding of causation behind the visible, that they know there is something going on that they can't see, they can't understand, but that it's having an impact somewhere. Just as a virus exists, it has a physical impact that eventually you get to see, even though you can't see the virus itself. Dehydration is another thing. Until it happens very slowly and you don't notice it until boom, it happens. There's a causation before the effect. The problem with a lot of the conspiracy notions, though, is that they are terribly materialistic. That is, they really are looking for this kind of chain of causation that is rock solid and doesn't really exist in many instances. And I always like to say, it's not that conspiracies don't exist. They clearly do. It happens all the time, every day. People get together and decide to do X, Y, or Z. That's why it's on the law books. But, we're talking about this secret that's here, and, there even if there is such a thing, I'm going to give benefit for that. Let's say there is this book or this page, and it has the secrets of the universe clearly written out in King James English for you, or 21st century English. How would you know if it's even true? I mean, there's no way of how would you even know? Because essentially the spiritual revelation is just that. It's a revelation. It's an inner revealing. It's an inner awakening. It's an illumination from within, an insight. So I just want to clarify that, why that notion of the secret. And then what happens is people then, again, in a very materialistic fashion, move from, okay, well, maybe they don't have some esoteric formula written down somewhere, like the Coke, or the original Coke, or Kentucky Fried Chicken formula. Okay, maybe they don't have that, for making gold that we can do in our basement. But what about the Masonic treasure? What about the treasure of Solomon that the Knights Templar fleet sailed off with and disappeared over the horizon with? And then they're trying to find this lost treasure. These are all very materialistic, and I would even say atheistic almost approaches to what the notion of the Masonic secret is. Masonic secret is essentially a mechanism or path of inner revelation that you have to undertake yourself. And Masonry can give you some symbolic guidance in that.
Yeah, that's definitely, that's a great point. I mean, it's, all jokes aside, I mean, that's why I said I'm not expecting that some, thing is going to pop it. And there's a secret stairwell that takes me down to the lost treasure. It's just like break some brick. I just know that's it's one of those. I think it's just that instinct. It's like you want to find that hidden gem. It's like, that's that's one of the things, like, because you've got the new show out, Lost Symbol, that's based
Right.
off of it. So you've got, and that's where I wanted to ask you about that. If you thought that this was going to have kind of an uptick from masonry, where you're going to get a lot more people that are involved, which, hopefully, that would be the case for you guys.
Well, probably. And I just say that because a great deal of contemporary spirituality, and we're going to look at masonry as a spiritual path in that regard, because even if it's a fraternity, there's a spiritual component to it in terms of how we relate to one another on an emotional and intellectual level. And if it's charity, again, there's a spiritual component to that in terms of compassion and mercy. They're both forms of karma yoga or action yoga, where you're doing something, for the benefit really of others in many respects. So if we look at masonry as a spiritual path in that regards, for better or worse, a great deal of contemporary spirituality is increasingly being filtered through quite literally the lens of media. And whether it be people receiving information through podcasts such as this, or having their ideas of what esotericism is, Freemasonry, alchemy, magic, etc., through television or movies, that's more and more the case.
Chris, you can help me with this. One of the questions I've had: do you ever see, a unification of the halls in the future? Because that's one of those, I don't know all the details.
Georgia just unified. I mean, it's coming together, but there's just some states that I just don't think it'll ever unify. I mean, I don't know about in your state. Even if I am AF and AM, am I welcome in your lodge in Pennsylvania? I mean, they're starting to unify, but there's so many clandestine lodges as far as people have went like overboard. You have international, which nobody recognized international.
Right.
You have people that just popped up and did it for the wrong reasons. They're registered as businesses, not nonprofit. And people have, they just take people's dues money. I mean, I may quote unquote take people's dues money, but they're not teaching the true secrets and the allegorical of masonry. So I don't know. I mean,
I think that's a really important point to bring up. And I have to say, I've seen this mostly in larger urban areas and often in the African American communities, when I've gone through them, where there seems to be a higher percentage of clandestine lodges. And I noticed it before I was a Freemason, by the way. And the reason it did is for something that you just said. It stuck out at me. I saw this, and it was in Rhode Island, in Providence. And I saw I knew where the Masonic Grand Lodge Rhode Island was. And then I passed, that's Prince Hall. And I knew what that was. And that was, nice building. And then I see this other one, and it had Inc., incorporated,
INC.
And, yeah, INC, incorporated. Now, by the way, all these other Grand Lodges are incorporated as well. A nonprofit is still a corporation, but it's a different status, and you generally don't put it on your, you don't put it on your card, your logo. So a clandestine lodge is what is a lodge or rite or order that is not recognized by regular masonry. And what that means is a variety of things politically, but in this instance, what we're talking about is really groups that often do exactly what you're talking about. They pop up, they have ciphers. You see, they've gotten the books, they've gotten the exposés, or maybe, you have a discount of some members in there, and they said, we can make some cash off this, and they start their own Grand Lodges. And I don't know what else they do except that. I mean, what they do in their communities may or may not be good, but they're not recognized. And if you don't have proper recognition, you cannot visit other lodges, or if you do, there may be consequences you don't like. So in terms of Prince Hall, I mean, in Pennsylvania, there's no problem with visitation. We have considerable visitation, and Prince Hall, in fact, has been in our lodge, our temple, our main building here locally for quite some while, rent free. I mean, so there's considerable cross, in terms of cross visitation. I mean, and then there's an issue too. You know, when I talk to young black men, I tell them, I say, you know, you've got some options here in your state, and Prince Hall is something to consider. And I say that only because you have to look at where you live, where your community is, and the quality of men that are in that lodge. That may be something you. I mean, if these are the men who, again, if are the kind of men you want to be around and can help you and you can help them, then that's an opportunity. Whereas you may go to another lodge, like around here, I can think of a half a dozen lodges easily within 15 minutes of me. Okay, 30 minutes of me, easily. They're made up of a whole different bunch of folks, different folks. I may simply not want to be in the farmer's lodge. You know, I mean, because at the social afterwards, you know, what are we going to be talking about? We may or may not be talking about something that's interesting. I may want to be in a different lodge.
Are they all recognized? You said there's like 10 or 15 lodges.
Oh yeah, they're all recognized. They're under the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania.
And they allow them to get in that close of a radius? Because I know our lodges are pretty, like, not scattered out, but you have to get, if I stay close to, let's just say, Macedonia Lodge, whatever, if I stay close to this lodge, you have to get permission from that lodge because you're in that lodge's jurisdiction in order to come to the lodge in your jurisdiction. I mean, even though they're all under the same Grand Lodge, in turns they want you to be kind of close to your home, I guess, to work in your community.
Yeah, right. And you know, I've had that discussion. You know, and we're getting into a technical issue here about membership. That for listeners, I've brought that point up. You know, when balloting on members, I've said, look, this guy passes 4 lodges on his way to ours. Why doesn't he join one closer to home so that he can do something closer to home? I said, so I'm going to abstain from balloting on him, but I think that we need to look at membership, just as you said, really within the community. You know, so and if you're driving 15 minutes and you pass 2 lodges to get here, I don't think that's a big deal. But if you're driving half an hour or would be a 45-minute drive, are we going to see you?
Yeah, you can't sustain that work.
Right.
As far as masonry is very demanding when it comes to fundraisers, charity events. It's very demanding. People think you get a compass and square, you put it on your car, and that's it. No, you go to meetings at least twice a month.
Mm-hmm. And if you're in locally, Prince Hall was very demanding. I'd heard this, that one of the things they did is to make sure people showed up is dues were paid monthly. So they that way you had to show up. I like that idea. If you're in a traditional observance lodge, you're going to be busy. You're going to be very busy presenting philosophical papers, preparing for that ritual, memorizing the work, and being able to explain an understanding of it to the members of your lodge. So, but you know, if you don't go that route, you can just join. There are many who do that. They simply join. They put the square and compass on the back of their car. They get their ring, and they do bare minimum. They pay their dues, and that's that's okay to some degree, but it's not sustainable. It's not vital. And I think just to take off on that point, and you brought something up earlier about men wanting that. I believe that the great deal of enthusiasm that we're seeing in Masonry in the last few years is laudable. The enthusiasm young men are bringing to it. However, I do have some concerns about the real explosion in excess of Masonic bling. People putting square and compasses on everything. I mean, on their lighters, on their gun holsters, on their wallets, on their, it's too much. There has to be a sense of dignity and decorum to it. When you see the original square and compass, those pins were very small, and they were put here, right, so that you had to lean in and really notice it. You got to see what that is. And I think we have to make sure that while we are encouraging enthusiasm, that we encourage dignity as well.
That was well put. You know, that was very well put. I mean, you don't need the biggest ring you can get as long as you have
Yeah.
some light on your finger. It goes
Mhm.
along. It goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. My
Yeah, I
ring
was,
is very small. I don't have it on because it's that time of the year when uh, the swelling starts from the rain. Because my ring is so small that I got it at an estate sale, and it's just a very old, beautiful Masonic ring. It's a rare black one on white gold with a diamond in the center. And for those who are interested, according to the French schools, that's the color of occult masonry. So we can, there's a little something for the conspiracy folks out there. Occult masonry, the black color. You rarely see that.
I know when you said it, I've been looking for one for a long time.
Yeah, it's
That's
usually blue for your blue lodge, or it's red. So you can have yeah, your fourth degree. Yeah.
now is because that's one of the things like I was going to get to. Just like because like the differences for somebody like myself who's not in it. I mean, what would you just? I mean, it's easier said than done. But what is if you had to really boil it down? What is the difference between York and Scottish Rite? Just to where it's just somebody like I know it's like myself.
Yeah,
Just where, yeah,
both of them. Both of them provide the full degree structure. However, and I don't know about all jurisdictions. I do in North America, that is, okay, the United States primarily. In Pennsylvania, York Rite is the only one that gives the first 3 degrees, and the third degree is the Master Mason degree. All Masons are equal because they are all Master Masons. Okay. Any number after that is irrelevant in terms of your status for voting in the body of the lodge. Okay. Now, in the 18th century, when Masonry was expanding, a variety of rites and lodges and degrees came about. Many of them took on different appearances. And what we think of as York Rite, those higher degrees in York Rite, have a strong Templar model. They're wrapped around the Templar mythos. And you'll see a strong focus on that. Now, within what we think of as Scottish Rite, and here we're talking 4th to 32nd, 33rd. 33rd is an honorary degree, and it's given at the discretion of the Grand Master of Scottish Rite for exemplary service. I was quite pleased this year. Several of my friends received it, and it was very nice to see. And those degrees cover a variety of stories. Some of them are, as all the degrees are morality tales, essentially. However, some of those degrees in Scottish Rite have a more esoteric bent to them. And some of them actually absorbed earlier esoteric groups as well into it. And that's where there's a lot of confusion, because even some of the brethren don't always know that. I go over it in my book. They don't understand. Well, that degree actually came from L.O. Cohen in France, and they were ritual magicians. They were ritual Masons and Masonic magicians in a way, where that degree came from. But it doesn't mean they're necessarily operated on that way today. So your Scottish Rite is almost like the college. Many people refer to it almost like the University of Freemasonry, because there is so much possibility of learning that goes on there, whether it be the southern jurisdiction, which is just spectacular, or even now the northern jurisdiction has been spending a lot of resources on Masonic education and doing a great job of it. So that's kind of a way to look at it.
I had a question for you from the inside, from the outside, from the inside looking out. When did no? I can't really find. When did the United States cut ties with England as far as being recognized by England? Is the United States still recognized by England's Grand Lodge, or I
Well,
know
yeah, our lodges are recognized. Yeah, they have to be. Otherwise, visitations wouldn't be possible.
from England?
The United Grand Lodge of England, yeah, they were recognized when they were founded.
So do we still does the lodges still pay dues to Grand Lodge of England, or like
Oh
it's
no,
that's
no,
what I'm saying.
no.
Initially, they paid dues to the Grand Lodge of England.
I think when the when the Grand Lodge of when the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts and the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania started, I would be quite certain that they weren't paying any dues to to the Oakley. I've never heard that before. I think that they were just they were independent entities.
Thank you for clearing that up. I've been looking around. I'm like, that was the first lodge I heard, the Golden Arches, and then it came to the United States, and I just couldn't find out the backstory on the England Lodge with the mainstream.
Yeah, the first two lodges were the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts and the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania, and and then others came out after that.
And then I know we could, like I said, I was kind of looking over my notes in your book. One, which by the way, too, Chris was reading it. He really liked it. Myself, same way. It is one of those, like you laid out when you first said here. It's like, all my jokes aside, there really isn't. As much as I give Chris a hard time, stuff, there really isn't anything like this nefarious behind the scenes plot. The Freemasons, hatch every time they meet, and how can we take over this community today, and control their this not here. And you, like I said, you lay it out the way you lay it out from beginning to current modern times. Just this is where we came from, this is where we are here. So it's not like I could say, man, he's really glossing over how it started. I mean, you have it just right from Alexandria. Yeah, you start there and go on.
I think the problem is that, again, Masonry is a big tent and an old tent. It's been around for well over 300 years as an organized entity as we understand it, which means it has roots that go back even further. But as a point in time that we can point to, we go to the forming of the United Grand Lodge of England for 1717. But so let's move off that. I mean, you have Masonic bodies involved in a variety of historical events, whether it's the American Revolution with the Boston Tea Party, or whether it's Garibaldi with the Wars of Italian Unification. And then we also see Masonic lodges having some cover for the IRA, and also at times in the South with the Ku Klux Klan. The reason being is that, again, these are local bodies made up of local men. And even though you are supposed to keep politics out of it, and religion and politics, that's not always possible all the time. Now, that being said, when this happens independently and is successful, like the Boston Tea Party, we look back and go, oh, isn't that great? When it happens and maybe it's unpleasant, we ignore it. You say, oh, well, that's not us. They're both us. They're just not us in the big sense. They're not us with a big U. They're us, and well, that's an aspect of us. But there's all these other things as well. That's like that 1%. Where there's that 1% of activity or 2% of activity that is fundamentally, in many ways, in violation of Masonic principles. Okay, but it happens. I mean, look. We can look at the church scandal, the Roman Catholic Church scandal, and that came very close to home with me here in Pennsylvania. Okay, we're not going to blame every priest. You're not going to blame every Catholic who goes to church for what happened, even though their donations helped financially support it. That wasn't their intention. That they weren't intending for that to happen. They didn't know it was happening. Many of them were shocked and horrified. So when we look at the experiences, what was that in the 80s with the Propaganda Due, the Italian clandestine Masonic Lodge, and the Vatican Bank scandal, that kind of thing gets locked onto by people, and that's it. That's all they focus on. This is it. And no, that's part of a very big puzzle. I mean, you have to think of Masonry as maybe a 1,500 piece puzzle or a 2,000 piece puzzle. You know, I mean, I stop puzzles at like 100. That's mine. I'm done. So, you know,
Yeah.
but you have to think of it in those terms. It really is like a 1,000, piece puzzle.
And I mean, there's many organizations like you said, to piggyback on what you said. There's many of organizations that has piggyback off the Masonic
Yes.
structure as
Yes.
far as their quorums, the treasurer, secretary,
Right.
whatever. They may call them something a little different in their house, but there's many, like Skull and Crossbones. There's many organizations that has
Right.
branched off. And if you research their roots, they were Freemasons first. So everybody says, oh, well, the Illuminati started or this started. No, just because they were a Freemason first don't mean that they didn't, they bounced off and started something else. So it has
the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn is a perfect example. All the founding members are Freemasons, every one of them. But it's not a Masonic order. Martinism, French Martinism. Almost all the members, in the early days were Freemasons, but didn't make it a Masonic order. So, but, you can tell people this, and, I've realized that some people, they're going to believe what they want to believe. And they're always going to say something like, well, you don't know what goes on how many grandmasters have you met? Probably not. I'm sure not as many as I have. So, when I say these people, well, you don't know. Yeah. Okay. We don't know.
I think I've met 3.
But you know what I mean by what I mean by that, to the conspiracy, one world globalist Masonic guy, I mean, if that's the case, why is it that Masonic lodges are among the first thing to be shut down by totalitarian regimes? They were crushed by National Socialism. They were crushed by communism. They were crushed in Iran. They've always been crushed or heavily circumscribed. Heavily circumscribed. I mean, in Spain, in Yugoslavia, they were heavily hammered.
I think a lot of people, like, if correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of them too is mainly just because of the connection that you guys have as a brotherhood. It's easier to, if you basically you've eliminating this portal that everybody has of getting together and communicating by breaking this apart. It's not so much that you guys control it. It's just like, I'm destroying the printing press. This word can't get out.
Yeah. Well, and the point is, like, if I see someone who has a ring on or square and compass in some way, I'm going to treat them a little differently, and they're going to treat me a little differently. And it doesn't mean necessarily they're nice guys either, but somehow that can trigger something in them. I remember years ago, I had a very nice jewel. I don't have it on because the clasp needed to be fixed, but it's the jewel from the master's jewel from The Man Who Would Be King. So it's the square and compass with the eye, right? And I had it. I was wearing it, and I was in traffic on the highway coming out of New York, and there was this massive backup, and I took an exit. I went to this gas station to ask for directions, and I remembered I'd been there the week before getting gas, so I knew where it was. And the fellow, he looked at me because he was very, he's kind of like, I don't know, he was being rude or dismissive or something. And he gave me directions. Okay. And then a few, about 2 or 3 weeks later, I had a breakdown at night. And he came up, and what he did is he looked at me, but he looked right at the jewel. And his whole tone changed. Because he was getting ready for the $700 tow, which wasn't going to happen. But he's changed his tone. So even there, even our best of members, or not because they are not necessarily best of members, will change how they may treat you as a member. On a more common level, it's just easier to talk to folks.
It is.
You and I meet, and it's just easier to start a conversation. And there's certain things you have in common right off the bat.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because you just even here, just, between the three of us, you two have more of a connection than I will ever have, because like I said, I'm not part of that fraternity, because I don't know the inner workings. I know what I've read. I've read your book, but that doesn't make me in any way where I could walk up and you're like, like you said, are you a traveling man? It's like, I'm going to be like, yeah, I like to go on vacation.
Yeah.
It's just, I'm not going to know the code, like something you're going to have something, you're waiting for the right answer. And I'm just going to be, I'm not going to have it.
Yeah, waiting for the code. And some of it's funny because like when you live close to another state, you're next to another jurisdiction, and they may ask the same question, but they phrase it ever like one word will be different, and you have to pay close attention, because the answer is completely different. It's like,
yep.
But that's part of recognition, and of course that goes back to the days when Masonry was suppressed, and it was a death sentence to be a member, because they were doing things in a democratic fashion, meaning that all members, one vote. They voted their own leaders. They had to be in agreement about new members. One blackball, you're out.
Has that changed? Excuse me.
Some places it's 3.
Okay, some places, yeah. One black ball stops it all. That was
right. That's right. One stops it all. And I think that, again, what I often would do is I would ask my questions about the membership, and if I didn't agree, I would abstain, unless I had a Masonic reason for, which means for so that listeners know, a legal reason. Like I knew definitely that this person was lying to us or was dishonest or could not be trusted, then I would blackball. I had to absolutely know. Otherwise, if it was just, like I said, the distance thing, I would abstain. I won't. But and that way you keep some degree of harmony. Now, of course, that works in many ways that are strong and weak. But when you look at the relationships between the people involved and the families involved, it does create the possibility of trust in very difficult circumstances. You get to know, okay, who can I trust? Who can I rely upon? Because at the end of the day, we're only as strong as our communities, and communities are only as strong as the individual members who make them up. Mm-hmm. It's a feedback loop. And all of these fraternal organizations, the churches, social organizations, whether it's the PTA or the library, the Friends of the Library, or the Elks or Kiwanis or Rotary, all of these are focused on the same thing: creating better communities and opportunities for personal improvement and growth. And Masonry offers that to young men who would like to be involved. And of course, my book goes over the traditional ways that would have been done in terms of what do you learn. And I believe that we need, as a group and as a nation, to as an educational system, start putting more emphasis on, like the 7 liberal arts and sciences.
7 liberal arts and sciences.
Yeah, because there it's, why is geometry important? I see these memes going around that say, they get rid of algebra 2 and put, family checking in. No, put family checking in there, but you got to keep, trigonometry as well, because in a complex society, these things don't run on checkbook mathematics. But you need to be able to understand how to run a household too.
Yeah.
And that's where logic comes in. You see, the meme itself is a logical fallacy. So you need geometry, you need logic, you need rhetoric, how to present an argument. We may not like these big words, but that's what we're doing. We need to discuss things as adults, like we're doing. We need to be good examples in that regard. And then, of course, there's astronomy, or they would call it astrology. Actually, it was astrology. And all of these aspects of what constitutes not just an educated person, but an educable person, someone who can be self-learning, self-educating, because now they have the tools. Remember the symbolism of the tools, the working tools to work on themselves. And then they're a benefit to their families, their communities, and everyone.
Oh, there's what happens with Chris every now and about this time, his internet dies on him. So this is a well-known thing. So just
that's all right.
Yeah. So what he comes, yeah, he's coming back in right now. So
Yeah, it always
there he is. Yeah.
But the working tools is big. I mean, I don't know if you talk about this in your book because I haven't finished it yet, but it's crazy how Freemasons used a 24-inch gauge to gauge their time. It's not a secret, but
Right.
I'm not going to get into what it means. But we gauged our time for separate things: family, country,
Right.
God. I mean, and it's crazy how they made something to make sure you delegated your time to what it needs to be delegated to.
I have a good friend who's an engineer, and as he says, time management is the foundation of all success. When you stop about it, you think about it, it's true. I have a friend of mine, also a brother, who he listens to this black evangelical preacher on the radio every now and then. And he loves the guy because he's so fiery, and he's just great to listen to, because he'll say, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. What are you doing with yours?
Yeah, that's a great point.
And so, I mean, that's a message that crosses all denominational boundaries. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. What are you doing with yours? Because the Masonic symbolism focuses a great deal around resurrection, which means death, and time. You see, Masonic symbols of time are very critical. The hourglass and the scythe are very strong in the symbolic structures. What are you doing with your time? What are you here for? What are you here to do? How are you being useful to others, and how are you improving your life? And that's what the book is about. Methods of self-improvement using what we would call classical methods of learning, so that you can become, again, self-referential in your education process. You can begin to educate yourself, because now you have the tools to discriminate properly between what is useful and what is not for you. And then again, and move that forward.
Yeah, that, like, one, you put it in your book. I'm learning Latin, so I'm still a little rusty. I think it's nullius in verba. I think is how you pronounce it, I believe. I mean, like I said, my Latin's rusty. It was just like on the word of no one. You have that best describes Freemasonry. In the little bit of time we got left, if you want, do you want to go into that, like what you were getting at, like that when you set out on this book?
Yeah, and on the word of no one is, one of the statements of the Buddha was that do not believe it because it was said to you by authorities or scribes or priests or scripture, but take it and test it and see if it fits your experience. And does this have meaning to you? And this is how we begin to grow. And remember, coming out of a time of intense religious conflict, which is what Masonry grew up in that time, and doctrines were very, very strong. In an appeal to authority, was the rule of the day in many ways. It's saying not to not trust authority. People knew enough not to question that, but to really be a walking question mark, to ask questions, to find out for yourself as best you can what is true, and how to know that it's true. Again, remember the question. It's not just to find out what is true, but how to recognize it, how to know it, and what is true for you. Because this is a difficult point for many people. What is true for you at one point in your life may not be true for you in another. I mean, we grow and change, and Masonry helps us to wrap our heads around that no one is going to tell you this is the truth. They can only share their understanding of it with you, and then you have to extrapolate your own understanding. And some will, some won't. That's why we have Big Tent. But each of us is in that same framework where at least we're trying. I genuinely believe even those just those who just show up, even in their own way, as passive as it may be, they're still trying to understand something greater than themselves.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but like I'm really fanboy. I'm really loving this podcast night. Correct me if I'm wrong. Back in the day, in the day, Masons knew a lot more about Masons than modern Masons because it was 7 years in between degrees. If it took you 7 years to finish to be a Master Mason, you almost knew everything.
Well, the general rule was 3. That is a year between each degree. But we saw even as early as the Grand Lodge of PA, which is a generation later, from 1717, if I remember correctly, we see complaints about the 1 month, 1 degree system early in the game, where
Wow.
and again, that's. But you have European lodges where it's a year. I mean, and when it's a year before you join, they check you out for a year. Then you're balloted upon and you're entered, and then it's another year before you go to your fellow craft, and a year before Master Mason. And now you're getting lined up for what may be, your journey to the East. And you're not going to just get up and get voted on to go to the East. There's a line. And you're going to go through that line. So that's another 7 years. That's 7 years before, if you get to the East, if it's going to be 7 years. So there are some lodges, and of course you'll hear about them, where the master, he may be the master of that lodge for many years. So I've heard of one where he was the master for, the master was the master of the lodge for well over 20 years. Because he was just so well respected. They just kept, he would serve, he was willing to serve, and they just kept voting him. I mean, he brought a lot to it. I mean, a lot to it. That doesn't happen.
I think that's amazing when you can get a worshipful master to serve that long in the craft. I mean, after 2 or 3 years, most worship masters fed up with it. Or
it's a whole different environment, though. They're bringing a tremendous amount of intellectual and spiritual power to that body when they serve that long. Again, what happens here is we often get caught up in, okay, well, how do we pay the bills? Who do we get to do this? How do we get to do that? The minutia can be very grinding and wear the officers down, unfortunately. But that's with any organization. We're not an exception. I mean, go join your library board and see how cantankerous that can be.
No, I can only imagine.
I speak from experience.
I'm the HOA president with 72 members, and my head is like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm done with it.
But when you're done, you're then able to help people because you have an experience that you get to say to your children or your grandchildren, listen, dealing with people is something we have to do. We have to learn to do it intelligently, and we have to learn to do it skillfully. And this is my experience. And then this is what I suggest to you when you're dealing with difficult situations or well-intended people who aren't always, they might be bossy, or they have their own way, and they're not or maybe they're not very skillful. We've sometimes had to deal with members who are really well-intended, but they just don't understand the situation, and they advocate for something that is destructive, not intentionally, but it's not going to work. So how do you deal with people like that? And you learn that in groups, and you learn how to be an adult. I mean, it helps you. That's the part of life that people miss. That's where you become a smooth ashlar. That's what takes the rough stuff off you and makes you useful to others because you have matured.
Well,
that's kind of like what you put on your book there too. Masonry is a metaphor for self-development.
Yeah,
it is.
You did that because like where you said that it was basically a better person is built and raised. And so that's why I said it was funny that you said that. I mean, I was just thinking that was one of the things I had for that's kind of where once again, like I said a few minutes ago, where the cool thing about this book is, especially for somebody like myself who's never been in it, you can kind of see, and you just like I said, you laid it out to where this isn't some clandestine secret organization that's all living in the shadows. I mean, you just walk in there. It's just things aren't meant for just anybody to walk in. You can't just you have your rituals. It's not nefarious. It's a way of just a connection.
I think I can put that and sum that all up. It's an organizations with secrets inside of it. The whole organization is not secret. He'll take you to the lodge, let you see the lodge. I mean, you can see it. I mean,
sure.
But there's some organizations with secrets in it, and if you look out everywhere, the secrets are not that secret anymore.
Yeah,
and you have to be able to understand it too. That's the point about understanding. The book, it gives everything away if you know what to look for. But the strange Masonic secrets that someone may want in it, that's not the important part. The important part is, how do you improve yourself as a human being and become useful to your community and to yourself and to others? That's the important part. And then how do you make beauty? I think that's often lost, even on members, that, the ritual is a beautiful ritual. It's about harmony. It's about symmetry.
Peace.
Yeah. How do we create beauty in the world?
Yeah, and you laid that out in your key points. What is Freemasonry too? Like I said, I read the books.
I got a question for you.
I do.
We'll make you a brother without apron.
That's right.
Yeah, honorary member. I got a question for you. I don't want to put you on the spot. Are you in the grand level? You seem like you should be in the grand level.
Oh no.
You're not.
Oh no. Thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah.
That's where I mean, I was thinking the other day, I had a really thought to myself. I'm like, you may be in Masonry 30 years and never even make it to a grand level.
I don't know why anyone would want to. I mean, look, there's great guys involved. But, realistically, I mean, if you're going to be in the grand line, you need to, at least here, I don't know what it is in your jurisdiction, but you had better be in a very high economic bracket. and the reason being is it takes so much time.
It does.
I mean, you have to be able to walk away from family, travel tremendously, okay, or at times walk away from business, meaning someone else has to be able to take that over for you. So you have to be high enough in a professional economic strata where you can do that. And I think that's where, again, some of the misconceptions about Masonry come in.
Not rich.
Yeah. And it's a problem too. Look, I mean, if a lot of our hierarchy is fundamentally very wealthy men, then the question is, do they understand, what's going on in the other lodges? And you know what? I've found for the most part they do. I mean, they didn't get there because they're stupid. I have found, generally speaking, for the most part, they're reasonable, intelligent, trustworthy men. Even if I may disagree with them on policies or procedures or some, like I jokingly say, one of the things when I got upset when the Grand Lodge several years back got rid of the book review section in the magazine, the Pennsylvania Magazine, I said, but so it goes. He's going to be gone in 2 years. Someone else will put it back in. And that's the beauty of it too. This too shall pass. I've often stated my concerns about Masonry, at least in my jurisdiction, appealing too much to veterans. My point being is we're not a veterans organization. We're an organization with veterans, and we need to be careful there that we don't become a VFW without a bar. And we've been kind of doing some of that in some ways. We need to have a greater expansion.
A line.
Yeah. But you know what? I mean, I'm not going to make a fuss over it. It's a big tent, which means to me, almost everyone, well, everyone of goodwill, right? Everyone of goodwill is welcome. And that's going to mean people you may not understand or disagree with. I'll welcome them in. And people I don't necessarily understand or maybe always agree with, I'll welcome them in, because if they're of goodwill, that's the meeting point. That's where we meet.
That was well said. I was
Mhm.
thinking of your
Well done.
position in the Grand as like a grand historian, because you're very knowledgeable on the history that most brothers don't have or most brothers don't care to know. That's why I was thinking more of like a grand historian.
Well, maybe we can put the bug in the Grandmaster's ear somewhere, and we'll see what they can come up with. I'll tell you, we've got spectacular people here in Pennsylvania. We really do. In the Masonic Academy of Knowledge, twice a year it meets, and it's free for members, and it's just literally world-class speakers. I don't say that like, oh, well, he's a great speaker and he's ours. No, these are world-class speakers, and they come from across the country and speak there. I was fortunate enough to present maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and it's free. They started using Zoom too. You don't even have to go down to Elizabethtown, although I like to go when I can. But they broadcast it to lodges by Zoom for the brethren who can't drive or don't want to. And guys from New Jersey, Delaware, New York, they come too. They hop across the line and they come, and it's great. So
Develop some sort of box where you stick your hand in and you do the handshake, and you do it right there, over the internet, so that way you can make sure that somebody just hasn't hacked into the Zoom call.
that's right. The virtual reality glove. You're right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's right. It's like if it doesn't work out, all of a sudden your screen just goes black. Well, screw up that handshake.
I like that.
No, but as as we're running out of time here, it's I want to definitely give a chance to plug some of your stuff here too as well. Because I'm going to start putting them up here on screen. Everybody, you can go to Amazon.com. The one we've been talking right now is The Path of Freemasonry. The craft is a spiritual practice. Just go there, follow him on. Just click right there, follow him right there on Amazon. Pick it up. You can get a Kindle, paperback, right now, courtesy Publisher Inner Traditions. That put that out. That's great. You can go see him at his blog, Institute for Hermetic Studies, and I'm trying. Is that Vox Hermes? Is that how you say it?
Yes, that's Vox Hermes. Yeah.
Yeah, voxhermes.wordpress.com. /. And here's a blog. It's well updated. He just did a post. I think 4 days ago, 5 days.
I guess so.
Yep. And so, as I said, it's well updated. Or you can also go to the Institute for Hermetic Studies, and that is hermeticinstitute.org, and that has all about the Hermetic Institute, events, resources, fun press. You can go there, check out with the books. I'd really like to bring you back and talk to you about this one right here, Alchemy.
Oh, The Path of Alchemy. Yeah, that's
Yes.
a good book.
So
that was my first book.
So if you're up for that, down the road, I would love, here later, I would love to bring you and talk to you about that one.
Sure, we can do that.
I've been wanting to do a show on alchemy for a while.
Well, that's
no
problem.
Was there anything else that you wanted to plug that I have missed?
Well, just that the Institute has a lot of coursework available that we created over the last probably 10, 15 years. And we were able to get it all together and organized on Teachable. And it's really very detailed and extensive. So if anyone would like to have a progressive and detailed instruction into practical esotericism, hermeticism, and that spiritual path, that is to go to Teachable, the Institute for Hermetic Studies coursework, and to take a look at it. And for some of that, we've just started now. We're going to be looking into offering continuing education units for some of the classes, not all of them, but some of them, and for professionals. And it's just it's a good platform. It's a great way to meet other people too, because we meet twice a month, first and third Thursday of the month. We have a 2-hour practice session with questions and answers. So you can come, you can take the classes, and you can just do that, be it on your own, or if you like, you can participate in a practice session Q&A with other students. So it's
awesome.
whatever you're comfortable with.
That's awesome. Well, Mark, I can't thank you enough. I mean, this has been, you helped, you helped check a little box there for Chris. I said I finally got one in his camp. That's so this was fantastic. I mean, everybody, all jokes aside, like I said, it was very seriously done. The way he's laid it out is amazing. And this is going to be high praise for you, Mark. I don't know if you understand. Chris does not read books. And so he read a majority of your book. So he doesn't read books. That's we're talking high praise here. He does not read books, and he picked it. He started reading, and he even told me, he's like, "This book's amazing."
Thank you.
So,
well, my other book by Inner Traditions, Egregores, is on Audible, so you can listen to that. And who knows? I understand that my book on alchemy is on Audible as well, although I didn't do it. The publisher had it done somehow, and I kind of just found out about it. I did the one on egregores. So if all goes well, maybe we'll end up having Freemasonry, the Path of Freemasonry, on Audible as well. So
that's awesome.
I would like that. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, because because I know it's because they list it right there, the Path of Alchemy, on Amazon right too, for Audible.
Yeah.
So it's all right there. That just, man, I'm amazed. The shows tonight were great, fantastic. I said this a lot, so I'm going to read into it. And I like I said, jokes aside, I'm not looking to Nicolas Cage, some Mason, temple, and just go breaking in, trying to turn over something, because I know if I hold it up to the light at, on the 12th of December, it's going to shine the path. Yeah. Yeah.
He'd be one of them brothers that when nobody's there, he'd get to the lodge early and just open doors and, dude, you're going to see a broom, some aprons.
For God's sakes, Craig, it's the broom closet. I know.
There's something in here.
You're seeing me.
Dust is coming.
Yeah, you're seeing me as I'm walking on every single checker. I'm sitting here like leaning to each side, trying to see if one's loose.
Pavement, talking about.
He's tapping it out like Indiana Jones, hoping something happens.
Yeah, just lean up against. Yeah, one of these columns has got to be hollow.
Yeah, because we move them.
I know. Yeah, what do you think they are, Mark? It's like, these feel hollow. Yes. It's an 80-year-old man having, let's set these things up for the meeting. Yes, it's hollow. Yeah, that's awesome. So, Mark, well, thanks again, sir. I would say we'll definitely be in touch, because I really, you've got some other, between the gates, you have a book on the Kabbalah. You have another one on Freemasonry as well. That is, the Path of Alchemy. I mean, you have a lot of work. I mean, you're well accomplished.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, thanks again, and we'd definitely be in touch. I appreciate you taking the evening and spending it with us.
Well, it was great being here.
All right. Well, everybody, this episode was brought to you by threebeardspodcast.com, because we're still waiting for a sponsor. So it's going to be our own website that's going to promote us. If you go to patreon.com/3beardspodcast, you can adopt one of our beards and help them not look so homely, and by helping us get beard oil. So that's a way of doing that. Or you can go to either redbubble.com/3beardspodcast, or, like I said, go to our website, threebeardspodcast.com, and you can go to the merchandise store and support us that way. We are rebroadcast every Thursday night at 11 p.m. on ERRT radio, and so that one says Wednesday, but it should say Thursday. So we do that courtesy of Ron. So check him out and thank him for that, and follow that. And everybody, just once again, really appreciate everybody watching. Have a great evening. And Mark, thank you so much, sir. Really appreciate it. and we will see you on the next show.
Thank you.
Good night.
Have a great night.
You too.